Beneath the scorching silence of an endless desert lies a kingdom erased not by war or time, but by the world's decision to forget it. For centuries, the shifting dunes have concealed a civilization once illuminated by learning, trade, and an understanding of the stars so precise that later empires struggled to replicate it. What remains now is not stone, nor artifacts scattered under the sand, but a question: how could a kingdom so advanced vanish so completely? The story begins in the late Bronze Age, when desert winds carried merchants, astronomers, and nomadic tribes across vast trade routes that linked distant worlds. Between these paths, a settlement grew first as a simple oasis, then as a flourishing desert state whose mastery of water made life possible where nature insisted it shouldn't be. The kingdom would come to be known, in fragmented records and half-remembered inscriptions, as Naharim, the place where the rivers sleep, a poetic title for a land whose lifeblood flowed beneath the earth. Travelers described its capital as a place of shimmering towers made of pale limestone, glowing under the sun like the bones of ancient giants. At night, the structures reflected torchlight and the soft silver of the moon, casting patterns across the sand that resembled moving constellations. The people of Naharim saw the sky not as a symbol of divinity but as a map, a guide to the seasons, the floods, and the deep cycles of the earth that few civilizations understood at the time. Their scholars charted the heavens, using towers aligned with equinoxes and solstices, creating a calendar far more accurate than those of many later kingdoms. But knowledge, like water, is fragile in the desert. Over generations, Naharim faced rising challenges: earthquakes that shifted underground aquifers, droughts that grew increasingly severe, and emerging rivals who sought control of the trade routes that sustained the oasis. Yet it wasn't a single catastrophe that ended them. It was the steady accumulation of pressures, each small enough to endure yet persistent enough to erode the kingdom's foundation. The people adapted with remarkable resilience, building deeper wells, developing new irrigation systems, and negotiating with tribes who moved ever closer to their borders. But the desert does not negotiate, and time does not forgive. Centuries later, long after the kingdom's decline had become inevitable, a final series of sandstorms swept across the region, storms so violent that chroniclers in neighboring lands described them as walls of night moving across the horizon. When the wind settled, the city that had once glowed under the stars was buried beneath dunes taller than its highest tower. Entire generations passed before anyone dared search for it again, and by then Naharim had transformed from a real kingdom into a whispered legend, a cautionary tale told around fires about the price of hubris in the face of nature. What makes this lost kingdom more than a myth are the traces that survived. Archaeologists in the early 20th century uncovered fragments, broken pottery etched with constellations, slabs of stone inscribed with symbols that appeared to track lunar cycles, and remnants of irrigation canals carved with precision far beyond what was expected for the period. These discoveries hinted not only at an advanced society, but at one deeply connected to its environment, constantly adapting to a world that demanded ingenuity to survive. Yet the most haunting evidence came from the journals of an expedition in the 1930s. While exploring the remote dunes of a desert plateau, researchers reported finding a series of subterranean chambers filled with collapsed wooden beams and shattered clay vessels. Among them was a partially preserved mural depicting a great procession, men and women walking away from the city, carrying scrolls, tools, and small idols. At the mural's edge, nearly erased by time, were symbols believed to mean the last exodus. If true, this suggests the kingdom did not simply die. Its people chose to leave, abandoning their ancestral home as the desert swallowed their streets. It is unclear where they went, or whether they found a new land to settle. The written languages of surrounding cultures offer no clear answer. Some believe the survivors merged quietly into neighboring societies, bringing with them fragments of knowledge that influenced later civilizations in subtle, nearly invisible ways. As the modern world advanced, interest in Naharim faded. Wars, shifting borders, and political upheavals closed off large portions of the desert, leaving research incomplete. When satellite imaging became common, the region drew fresh curiosity. Strange geometric outlines beneath the sand hinted at buried structures, but confirmation remained elusive. The desert, as always, guards its secrets with patience. What remains today is less a record of Naharim's rise and fall than a memory of what humans are capable of when confronted with the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. The vanished kingdom stands as a reminder that even the strongest societies rely on fragile systems: water, climate, trade, and human unity. When one falters, resilience becomes a temporary shield. When several collapse at once, even the greatest achievements may survive only as faint echoes under the sand. And yet Naharim's story is not one of failure. It is a testament to adaptation, innovation, and the human desire to carve meaning out of impossible circumstances. The people who once gazed at the stars above their desert home were not defeated by the land, they were shaped by it, guided by it, and ultimately preserved through the traces they left behind. Today, as the world faces its own environmental challenges, the Lost Kingdom offers a quiet message carried through millennia. Civilizations endure not because they conquer nature, but because they learn to listen to it. The sands may have buried their city, but not their legacy. Beneath every dune lies the possibility of rediscovery, and with it, the chance to understand who we once were and who we may yet become. In the end, the desert does not erase. It remembers, it keeps stories in silence until someone is willing to hear them again. And somewhere beneath the shifting sands, beneath centuries of wind and time, the forgotten kingdom waits patient, ancient, and alive in the memories we choose to uncover.